Θα ήθελα να καλέσω στο βήμα τους 4 ομιλητές μας και ομιλήτριές μας για το πάνελ. Η κυρία Κανελοπούλου, η κυρία Νίκα, Mrs. Rubel, and ο κύριος Λαμνίδης. Ωραία. We will conduct... Alexandra. We will have a panel, and the idea behind this panel, as we always do with panels, is to put some flesh into the insights we heard from our keynote speaker by grounding the topic on what businesses do. So, if businesses use AI and the digital mindset, how is it that they do it? So, I asked our panel members to offer us examples of the use of digital tools and AI in particular, things that can go wrong when the use of these tools is very successful. What can we learn from successes and failure? And we have decided to do this in a rolling conversation. So we're not going to have stand-up presentations. Rather, we will start straight away with the questions that preoccupy us. Let me introduce our panel members from left to right. Mrs. Denia Kanelopoulou, Innovation Director and AI Innovation Expert at Democritus in Athens. Dr. Meryl Nika, AI Product Lead at Google and Meta in California, and founder of AI Product Academy. Mrs. Sasha Rubel, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
It was perfect.
Okay. Head of AI and Machine Learning, Public Policy, Amazon Web Services, and Mr. Alexandros Lamnidis, Managing Partner at Boyden. It's a wonderful panel. I have communicated with all panel members before, so they know more or less what to expect. We're all in tune with the message that we would like to convey and to discuss here. So let me fire away with Mrs. Kanelopoulou. Denia, you are on the scientific side of things, developing AI tools and so on. But at the same time, you have experience of Greek companies using these tools. Overall, if you were to offer us an overall view, how do Greek companies mostly use? What kind of tools do they use? And for what purposes?
Thank you. Starting, I would like to say that Greek companies are really seem eager to adopt AI technologies more and more as we progress, because now that the AI tools have proved their worth, they are becoming more trustworthy, and this is something that they can feel it, they have experienced it. It's not something like from the future, as it was some decades ago that we were still doing AI, but people were not talking about it. And it was mostly in the scientific community, in the research results. The companies in Greece, now they are exploring on how they can use the data that they have available. So mostly the technologies that are interested in are technologies that are taking advantage of this data to provide new knowledge and also to support decision-making. And I'm always stressing the word support decision-making and not decision-making per se, just relying on the algorithms, because we have to always have the human in the loop and always have humans evaluating and monitoring the progress of the tools and also the results. most of the companies that are approaching us, they are interested in knowledge that comes from documents, because now the digitalization of documents in most enterprises has reached a level where they can be exploited. And all this abundance of data now with AI, it makes sense, because AI can support asking, for example, questions in a chatbot and getting an answer that comes from multiple documents and even different kinds of and formats of documents.
Can you share with us a typical example of a Greek company coming to you and saying, I want this? What would this be?
They would ask, I want AI to do some magic and provide a wonderful result. So then it's somehow an ugly role to say, okay, artificial intelligence is not doing magic, and it needs a lot of effort that is relied on a human. But also, it's really important to set the problem correctly, because referring to Paul's presentation earlier, and the example of the company that monitored the internal consultations of the employees, in that case, and in many cases, what they are asking in the beginning, the algorithm to do, is not what they really need. So that's something really important, to see what they really need, and then to choose what is the right algorithm, and then to judge the result, not in terms of the performance of the algorithm in a technical term, because maybe this algorithm in that company had an amazing precision on the result they produced, but the result didn't have any value in terms of business. So it's something we also like to stress. Let's find together what are the business KPIs, what is the business value that you are going to get, and let us worry about which algorithms to use.
Don't be fixated on technology yet. Tell us what it is that you want to use it for, and then working backwards, you can decide what kind of tools. Okay.
Exactly.
Marilyn, can we go over to you and tell us about, from California, where you're based, what kind of patterns of use do you see in the use of AI and digital tools?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here. So I come from the other side of things, where we create the tools that people will then consume and use. And I am a product manager. So essentially, we're leveraging AI in order to bring experiences and superpowers with magic to users. Now, there are two different things I want to call out. Number one, we have AI product management, meaning I will personally work with data scientists that train the models that I can then take and put together in an experience so that people can query Google Gemini, so that people can speak to a device and it can recognize their voice and so on. And then there is AI for product managers, which is how can we use these tools to make our day-to-day life better and easier. So I work in both sides of things. And I actually like the question that came up earlier from Paul, which was, hey, is AI going to replace our job? Someone came to me and said, hey, I'm a product manager. Is AI going to replace me? And the answer is, AI is not going to replace you, but those that leverage AI are going to replace you. So in California, everyone is leveraging AI. Of course, there are concerns and so on, but we're trying to minimize them in every way possible. And I just experienced the future over there, and I slowly see it crippling in all over the world. So I'm so excited about AI and the experiences it can create.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. It's the same question, actually. In your experience, what do you see people are worried about, or what kind of uses do they make of these tools?
Ooh, so worried about and what kind of use they're making are two very different questions. So what they're worried about, I would say almost everything, actually. And Paul, I think you articulated it really well. One of the things that we're seeing with generative AI is there are emerging risks that are top of mind for businesses and policymakers alike around data protection and privacy, intellectual property, toxicity and safety, hallucinations. Right now, and I know we're just about to go to elections also in Greece, one of the biggest things that people are thinking about is what is the risks related to generative AI and misinformation, for example. Another issue, and you articulated it beautifully, in this idea that somebody using AI will replace those that don't use AI, is the question of AI and the future of work. From the perspective of Amazon Web Services, one of the things that we are really underlining is, yes, there are risks, but there are great ways to address those risks. And one of the ways that you can address those risks is actually also through AI. So for example, there are questions around bias and fairness. One of the tools that was one of the first tools we developed at Amazon Web Services, which is called SageMaker Clarify, is dedicated specifically in using AI to automatically detect biases in data sets. Because the people developing these data sets, at the end of the day, they have bias. And so those biases are going into those data sets. And one of the things that I often say is AI is not a mirror for what is going on in our society. AI is a magnifier. And it's an amazing opportunity to rectify those biases in those data sets, but also in the communities that are building those data sets through education. And again, the theme of education, which I hope we'll circle back to, comes up a lot. Another way in which we're addressing these risks is really looking at how to systematize, for example, guardrails in input and output filters regarding personal data processing, or issues related to, for example, watermarking, so it's easier to understand what is and isn't synthetic data, which is top of mind, again, for many people around the world. And so that's one of the things that we're particularly focused on, is moving from principles to practice, because when you talk about responsible AI, I imagine everybody in this room will say, 100% we agree that transparency and explainability are important ideas. When you talk to an engineer, they're going to say, great, these are words, how do I actually embed this in my algorithm? And so we have an approach where we differentiate between bolted on, built in, and by design. And our approach is really to have responsibility by design in the ways in which we're developing these services. And our model service cards, which are dedicated to transparency, really address a lot of the concerns that people have around uptake of AI, because as human beings, what we don't understand, we're afraid of. And many people do not understand artificial intelligence, and these kinds of initiatives, alongside education, are a way to address that. The second part of your question, in terms of what do you see in terms of adoption, I would say that we see a big shift from 2023, which was AI is magic and it can solve all of my problems, let's experiment, to, okay, what is the return of investment, and how can, and you said this again also really beautifully, how can we work backwards from the actual business need and use case that we are trying to solve. And we see that in companies in Greece, like, for example, Deep Sea, for their shipping, using AI to really help them translate data into wisdom and insights. We also see that with, for example, Omilia, another Greek company and a customer of AWS, that is really exploring how this can help deliver customer service at scale. Those are just some examples in terms of what we're seeing. I do expect in 2024 for us to really shift the conversation towards what can generative AI do, but also what can generative AI not do that traditional AI ML can also do very well, especially in light of the considerations, and I'm sure in Greece as well, this is something that's being discussed, of the carbon footprint of innovation and of running some of these systems. So I expect, and I see the conversation shifting, where instead of saying, and businesses coming to us saying, we just want to do something with generative AI, we don't know what, but it has to be generative AI, saying, what is the problem that you would like to address, and what is the best technological solution adapted to that challenge and that use case?
Okay, thank you. Alexandra, what's your take on this? What do you see?
Well, we see the world from a different angle, because we are in human capital. So our processes are actually in order to speed up the process of hiring the best and at the same time making sure that we do not overstep in all whatever ethical or public trust questions. The idea mainly for us is we work at worldwide context with several platforms of AI in order to speed up our process. What we do is that we have definitive times for research as well as for completing a project. We have set out certain percentages as to how much we want it reduced without actually limiting or diminishing our accuracy and public trust. So this is where we are at worldwide level. At worldwide level, for example, it takes us about 20 days to do thorough research on a project, to know which individuals we're going to be seeing and interviewing, and then it takes another 117 days on average worldwide in order to see individuals, write reports, manage which are the best according to customers' needs. Now, the idea is that on many occasions, you need to be very careful what are the customer's needs. There are cases where not even the customer knows what his exact needs are. So in a way, you need to be a confessor. You need to sit next to them and make sure that they understand exactly what they want, and they know that what they have depicted in their minds is what they are going to be getting. This is not that easy. The moment you do that, then you can use your platforms in order to speed up time and make it more accurate. Are we there? We are not. We are developing. We are doing things at a worldwide level. We are using it in different organizations throughout our network in order to become better at what we do. So this is exactly where we are today. As far as ethical questions and public interest is concerned, I consider this a must, and we would never compromise on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are some themes which are emerging, and I want to connect some of them with Paul's talk. This is a question to anyone who wants to take it up. I'm keen to see where things go wrong. When people have good intentions, they roughly know what their business needs may be, but somehow when they try to digitize things or use digital tools, then they end up in this high percentage of failures. If, in your experience, if you have seen this, then how do you account for it?
I think a lot of people haven't realized the probabilistic nature of AI. And they think, I'm going to staff a team, we're going to have these goals, we're going to train the AI, it will work. This is not how it works. The probabilistic nature is just so important. I have sat in product reviews with leadership, and they would bring in this demo. Leadership would try the demo, and every single time, the outcome would be different. Leaders then came in and said, why this is not working. But us, we were like, hey, it is working. AI works this way. For every time you go on ChatGPT or Gemini and ask something, you are guaranteed to get a different answer. So I think, I don't want to say people don't really understand AI, but that's kind of what it is. People need to understand that, hey, AI is kind of unpredictable. There is a lot of bias in there. There is a lot of risk. So we need to set the expectations right by educating people on how AI works before we go ahead and training models and invest.
I think that's a fascinating point. I like the idea. I think it has broader implications of AI being probabilistic. So what it requires is that we cultivate this ability to think probabilistically, which means non-deterministically.
Yep.
But what you get is not necessarily what you think you will get is not what you will necessarily get. There are possibilities out there which may not be realized. So that it takes a different kind of thinking, which I think not many people are prepared to accept it. Sasha?
I think people are also, and one of the things that we're seeing, moving very quickly towards thinking about what kind of AI strategy they should adopt without necessarily, before that, putting in place a data strategy. And actually, the backbone of any good AI strategy is a good data strategy. And so one of the things that we're constantly advising customers is really to make sure that you have a robust data strategy in place to make sure that you can get the outputs that you need. And again, I really appreciate you flagging the educational piece. And Paul, I liked how you talked about this cultural dimension, because there is a very strong cultural dimension. And we recently commissioned a survey of European companies and citizens to identify what were the blockers for adoption to AI. There are three major ones, but one of the three was the question of digital skills. And actually, just to share with you some of these statistics, we found that 61% of businesses said that the lack of digital skills inside their company were actually blocking them from adopting AI. Some of their job descriptions were open for more than 6 months. And actually, of the people that were most interested in learning AI, it was a demographic that was surprising, which was people upwards of 55 years old, who were very conscious that the world of work is going to change. They want to continue working. They want to participate, and they need to use these skills. But when we surveyed employees, we actually found that there were two blockers for employees in learning these new skills. One was the lack of time. They're like, we already work 12-hour days. We don't have time. And the second was the prohibitive cost of these training programs. And so that's why we think it's really important to make these classes available in a self-paced format and also for free online. And it's one of the things that we did at the end of last year as part of our AI Ready commitment with 80+ classes. But I would say here that it's not just about understanding what AI is as a technology. It's also about understanding what does it mean to develop and deploy this technology responsibly? So that just because it's technologically feasible, we have an understanding that it doesn't mean that we should necessarily build it. And so I think that this educational dimension is really important. The other piece that we see is kind of where things could go wrong is the question of transitioning from proof of concept to production, which I think, again, really requires a holistic understanding, not only of the technology, but also of the blockers that exist inside the company that are resistant to change. I have never heard, Paul, this example of, I think it was Diane in the data example that you gave. I was completely blown away. I think this is a great example of how data can help us, but it also needs to be contextualized in a broader context. And that's where the holistic piece comes in, and the training dimension becomes a really important part.
Absolutely, yes.
Can I add one more thing? I love your point about we call it productionization. So if you have the AI that works perfectly in the lab, when you put it out there in the wild and millions of users getting there and use it, the data that they are going to provide is different than the data used to train it. So the quality of the experience is not going to be as good. And people don't realize that as well. It's productionization really degrades the quality until it's back up. But that dip in there is where people need to just stick it out and wait until models can get better over time.
And that's where the fine-tuning, I think, is super exciting in terms of where things are going. We see really the fine-tuning possibility also in terms of data security really exciting, but also this move from large language models to small language models that will be really specific for use cases like in the health sector, where this is completely transforming what can be done going forward.
That's right. I want to pick up on one of the themes that you mentioned, Sasha, which is the prerequisites for AI, and data strategy is such a prerequisite. But I want to go over to Denia. Denia, in your experience with Greek companies, do you see this some kind of thinking about what do before I go to AI, I need to do a number of things first? Do you see that type of thinking when people think about AI? Have you seen companies prepare themselves through data strategies first before they go all the way to AI?
Yeah, actually, most of them not. Even really large companies, and it's happening not only in Greece, because we are in contact also with companies in Europe or abroad, and it's something that they haven't realized, that it's a transformation. It's like a digital transformation, that you don't just introduce a new tool and everything is changing and everybody adapts to that. It needs like a change of culture, a change of mindset. So we understand that Greek companies, they need support on that. And that's why through the Digital Innovation Hub Ahead that we created, and it's now becoming a spin-off of Demokritos, we introduced a methodology for digital transformation with the use of AI. And we are trying, using this methodology, to support Greek companies go through different kinds of phases, starting with awareness. During the awareness phase, the top management must commit to change, to accept the change in culture and the change in strategies and in policies that AI needs. And also then going to the piloting phase, and there, going back to the previous question, is where we identify a lot of mistakes, for example, that go, and it's not like only the algorithms that, and the unpredictability of the result that can cause failure, but it's also, for example, that the top management thinks that by employing someone who has just graduated from university will be enough in order to introduce AI into their business. It might be the cheapest way, but it's gonna fail for sure, because implementing AI needs much deeper understanding of the business problem and all of these changes that must be done inside a business, but also choosing the right algorithms that are right for the specific problem, having the maturity to recognize when there is a technology or a business shift in order to retrain the AI models so that they can still produce the right result. And these are things that it's normal that the Greek companies don't know it, and they just think, and especially with ChatGPT, that it's so easy to use by everyone. They think that putting AI in our business and replacing functions with AI is that easy. But yeah, it can be for generic functions. But in terms of having good results in specific functions, you need a lot of customization. You need to focus in a quick win, doing a pilot where it's in a function that is easy to accept the change, but also that will prove the value to other stakeholders, so that then most people in the organization embrace all these changes that will incur during this process.
Yeah, thank you. Now, before I carry on, I would like to invite any questions. If there, I'm happy to receive questions, of course, electronically, but also if anybody wants to make a comment, ask a question. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, great discussion, great panel, great debate. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have to admit that in my question, I'm kind of biased towards Mr. Alexandros Lamnidis' frame of mind. So I was listening to comments like responsible implementation and ethics and stuff. So I had a small discussion here with my little AI app on the spot. I will read a question and answer, 2 questions and answers, and perhaps you'd care to comment. Do you think AI responses to questions set by people, I asked, should only have recommendation role, or do you think it is mature enough to autonomously implement its conclusions? And the answer was, this is an interesting question. As an AI myself, I believe that my primary function is to provide recommendations, suggestions based on the data I have analyzed. However, Once I am provided information, I am able to make decisions independently and autonomously. In other words, although I rely on humans for setting the questions, I can use my own intelligence to arrive at suitable autonomous conclusions. And then I asked, I apologize, my name is Panos Livadas, I am the CEO of Green Properties. So then I asked, aren't you worried that your conclusions may be erroneous in some cases? And if you're granted with implementation rights, you may take the wrong actions? And the answer was, yes, I acknowledge that there is a possibility that my conclusions could be mistaken. However, I constantly strive to improve my accuracy rates by learning from my mistakes and adjusting my algorithms accordingly. Additionally, I am designed to prioritize safety and well-being, so even if my actions were to lead to unintended consequences, they would be unlikely to cause harm to anyone. So my take, I don't know what everybody else's take, is that my little app is just one small step before saying, sure, I can implement, I can decide, I am ready, I am there. It's just a small political steps ahead. So perhaps you'd care to comment. Thank you.
Alexander, you would?
Yeah. Well, I would say no, it isn't. Blindly, it isn't ready yet. It may be in some years' time, depending on data that is going to be fed. And for example, in our case, we have not only the dexterities of a person in order to get into a position, but he has to fit with the culture. He has certain personality traits that may or may not coincide with the personality traits of a company. So it is a far bigger, I would say, set of data that has to come into the picture in order to help out. So I would say that at the present time, we need to have people who are monitoring and furthering the case, providing more information. As it was said before, we need to bring more data in order to be able to have more data, not only on dexterities and education, but also in terms of personality and psychometrics. But in this case, we need also to have a whole personality and psychometric test of the whole company and what they want and who survives in that kind of environment that they have, which needs to be matched. This is much more difficult to do than simple, I would say, experiment believing in what AI is offering today. I would like to share with you that I asked GPT, based on the questions that were sent to me, to provide me with some answers. I read them. They were so generalistic that I just erased them and never used them because it's not there. The system cannot really help you with more complicated issues like the ones you are bringing up. As far as the Greek industry is concerned, I'd like to share with you some information that was actually shared by the Federation of Greek Industries, that only 12% of companies are actually in the process of using AI. That's 2 in 3 companies, 66% believe that they will not be needing AI. And this provides us with the hurdle that there is ahead of us as to how AI is going to be implemented. As far as we know, we Greeks are rather untrustworthy of any system. We are always putting question marks in everything, and we start by saying no before we turn it to yes. After many, if you like, discussions, debates, and argumentation. So it doesn't really surprise me. But on the other hand, we do need to move ahead on this platform. I am a baby boomer, as it is evident. And I remember when I was at university, there was a lot of talk about whether Concorde should be built or not. And everyone knew that I knew deeply in my guts that it was going to be built, no matter how many arguments we're going to be having. So with the AI, it's exactly the same. No matter what kind of arguments we may be having, whether we trust it or not, yes, we need to actually contain it within certain context and laws, as well as practices and ethics. But I know that it's going to be around us in the next 5 to 10 years, taking over many, many tasks that are now done by people. IBM came out with a report that 40% of jobs will be disrupted in the next 3 years. I believe it. It's going to be like that. And I liked what the CEO of Microsoft said the other day, that we see AI as a co-pilot that is a co-pilot to everyone, and everyone is going to be doing his job with his co-pilot next to him, which will be AI. I like that because this is more to the hybrid model that was mentioned before by your president, and I feel that more or less we'll be moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Is your sense that what Alexander said is, in effect, the augmentation model is going to prevail? Is this what we're seeing now, that is as a tool which will be augmenting people's work? Is this the way we're moving towards? Because there's an alternative model, which is the replacement model. Some techno lovers, they would think even technology will take over, you know, the kind of the singularity principle and becoming more intelligent than human beings. So if you were to project the way things go, would you say augmentation is the way forward?
The word I would use is enhancement.
Enhancement.
It's here to enhance us, and it will never be able to read the room. It will never be able to have a soul. There's a little experiment I want to try, and I want to see if that works. Let's ask ChatGPT to see what it says. All right.
What did you ask?
I'm about to turn it on. Okay, it's good. Hey ChatGPT, you're here on microphone. We're on a conference with top leaders from Greece. Can you please tell them in what ways you can enhance the employee productivity? Let's see. All right.
I'm here to share how AI, like ChatGPT, can enhance employee productivity in several key ways. 1, automating routine tasks. AI can handle repetitive tasks such as scheduling meetings, data entry, and responding to common queries, freeing up employees to focus on more complex and creative work. 2, providing instant information. AI can quickly retrieve and summarize information, helping employees make informed decisions faster. 3, personalized learning and development. AI can offer personalized training programs based on individual learning styles and progress, helping employees develop their skills more efficiently. 4, improving communication. AI-powered tools can facilitate better communication through real-time language translation, sentiment analysis, and more effective email management. 5, enhancing.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
He did a better job than me answering. There you go.
Sasha, yes.
Just a quick comment on the general discussion. I find it problematic, our tendency to anthropomorphize everything related to chatbots, what we're moving towards in terms of personalized agents, and just want to recenter the debate on the foundational principle of responsible AI practices around the world based on human rights, but also based on, for example, the OECD principles, conversations at the UN, is the question of human in the loop and human oversights. That fundamentally, and this is one of the big blockers of adoption of AI, there needs to be a general understanding that there is a human in the loop in the final decisions that are being made, and that AI is a tool that contributes to translating unstructured data into insights and wisdom, but the final decision that is being made, that's being made by a human being. So one point. Second dimension is that I'm very, very excited by some of the advances in responsible AI right now, particularly one of our customers and also partners in our research on responsible AI, Anthropic, has an approach called constitutional AI, which is basically looking at how to embed principles for human rights into the AI itself through reinforcement learning with human feedback. And so for me, that is the direction where we are going, is you will be asking a generative AI chatbot or through an interface like booking.com, certain questions. And in fact, that system will just not return on the question that you are asking because responsibility is embedded. And I think, and again, I really appreciated what you shared, because I think one of the biggest blockers to AI adoption right now is the lack of trust in the technology. And I want to be absolutely clear, responsibility drives the trust, which drives the adoption, which drives the innovation. So if there is no responsibility, ultimately, there is no innovation because there won't be this adoption. And we also identified that there's also a big gap between bigger companies that are adopting AI, so around 51% in the EU, versus smaller companies, so 31%. And that gap is based on two things: lack of trust, which is where the education comes in, and the other is a lack of regulatory certainty. So many of you will know that the EU AI Act was just adopted, I think on the 21st of May, and there's a lot of work still to be done. But one of the biggest things that we hear from startups and customers is we don't have the human, financial, or legal resources necessary to navigate a fragmented landscape between the EU AI Act, the GDPR, EU standards, international standards, and really needing to have clarity on what regulation means, particularly as it concerns things like transparency and responsibility. And that's where I think industry also plays a really important role in terms of helping policymakers think through how can you render technically feasible elements like explainability, where you can, for example, in a regulation, and the EU AI Act addresses certain dimensions of this, say, you cannot use this AI in specific circumstances, and if you do use this AI in specific circumstances, here are the things that you will need to comply with. In reality, a lot of these compliance obligations are things that companies are already doing because we believe that it's the right thing to do, but that kind of direction, speaking to your point on regulatory frameworks and clarity, I think is absolutely essential, coupled with the trust needed to drive adoption.
Yeah, thank you. Any?
Yeah, I think trust is really important. It's something that actually hinders adoption, because sometimes the companies are really worried that in the EU we have too many regulations compared, for example, to the US or to China, and this will not allow them to innovate and to create new solutions using AI. But in fact, since solutions that are trusted are more easily going to be adopted, then in the end it's like really worth it, and we are lucky to be in this place. And I know it's difficult for example, for smaller companies to comply with all these things that are going on with the AI Act and whatever, but still the EU is making a lot of efforts. They have established the AI office that is going to support and to fund actions towards this goal. We are also, Demokritos is participating in a really big initiative for building a European platform for AI. And by definition, all the solutions that will be published because it will be also a marketplace, by default, all the solutions that will be found there will be trustworthy. We will have tools that will assess the trustworthiness of solutions. So there are a lot of steps that are being done, and a lot of support and funding will be given during the next years towards this.
Can I just help me unpack the very idea of trust? Trusting whom or what? Are we talking about trust between employees, trusting the employer? Are we talking about trusting the tools to do the job that we expect them to do? What exactly is involved in the word trust? Marilyn?
I would define it as feeling vulnerable enough to ask the question you have in your mind, to ask for the help you will need for your job. So it's you against the machine and the way you'll interact. I think that's what it is.
So then I need to trust the machine? Is that what you're...
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
To trust it so that it can help me in the way I need it to help me.
Okay. And what about skepticism here? I want to be also, if I'm critically thinking, would I be able to trust that at the same time be skeptical about the answers I'm given?
So that's the second layer. So first is, do I trust this enough? And then I get some output. Do I trust this to be the right output for me and my personal... But I feel the most important part is the first one. The second part, we say in Greece, όταν μπεις στο χορό θα χορέψεις, you know, once you get in there, eventually you get used to it. I find that peer influence is very important. Like if my colleagues are using it and they're telling me, hey, I'm so much more productive, I'm doing so much better with this, then I am more likely to trust it as well.
Well, in my case, in my university, people are using it. I thought to myself, well, I cannot carry on without using it. So there's an imitation game to some extent, which then gets you deeper into the use, and therefore then you can see more possibilities, which you didn't see at the agnostic stage you were before. And I guess this is how people develop. They get to like these tools. Sasha?
I think trust is very linked to transparency in terms of the initiatives, for example, that we have put in place that I mentioned earlier around AI model service cards. People want to understand what kind of training data was used to train this model. What kind of design considerations were made in the development of this model? What can you use this model for, and what can you not use this model for? And that's where I think a lot of the transparency initiatives, like model service cards, but not limited just to that, play a really important role in trust. But I just want to reflect on what you just said. I read a lot. I don't believe everything I read. When I read, I will say, okay, here's maybe where the context comes from. Here's the political leanings of the journalist. Here are the previous articles the journalist wrote. And again, just shifting it back to education, I think that one of the key things is to say, this tool is an incredible tool that can help you perform an enormous amount of different kinds of tasks, increase your productivity. But in parallel, we need to have critical engagement, especially depending on different ways that you're using it. If you're using a fine-tuned foundation model to, for example, recommend music on Spotify, that's pretty low risk. So if they just recommend a song that I don't like, I'm just going to skip the song, right? But if I'm using that to help a doctor diagnose a possible tumor in an X-ray, I'm going to want to fine-tune that model and optimize it for accuracy. And so I think, again, the question of trust also comes down to what is the end use case and what are you using it for, and looking at how you can fine-tune models to increase that trust in parallel to education. Just as an anecdote, I think that there's a lot of fear around this question of trust or no trust. I have an 18-year-old daughter who wants to be a prompt engineer. Without unveiling to you how old I am, when I was in college, prompt engineer as a career option definitely did not exist. My 94-year-old father, who, when I first showed him YouTube and email, didn't understand that I didn't need to go to the post office to send something, and thought YouTube was the most miraculous thing he had ever seen, now uses a generative AI chatbot to access information on a website that he would have been completely unable to understand related to his taxes and Social Security benefits. So these kinds of like extremely concrete use cases, I think show, first of all, how we need to be educating our young people, and then also the ways in which, yes, we need to build trust, but we also need to be really practical in the everyday ways in which this technology is completely transforming the ways in which we live and work. So yes to education, yes to fine-tuning, yes to constitutional AI, and yes to transparency. And I think that together really builds the pathway towards responsible AI adoption.
Thank you. I would like to take some questions from the floor. Yes. 1, 2. Can I have a show of hands, please, to see how many have 2 already? And 2 at the back. Okay. The mic. It's here. Εντάξει, δεν πειράζει, ήρθε.
So, good morning. Practically, what we should do tomorrow, on Monday, first thing, as parents, as for ourselves, and as managers of our companies, to adapt AI and to be part of this revolution.
Anyone would like to take it?
Well, I guess you are part of this revolution already, since we know each other. That's all right. I feel that we need not be hasty about it. First thing, we talked about trust before. As far as I'm concerned, number one is, do I trust my CEO and my board to bring me there? Now, it's not about the AI. It has to do with the people involved and how they actually convey the message that we mean it and we want to move ahead. And of course, together with that come the repercussions as to what will happen to the organization, and anyone has in his mind, is my job in jeopardy? Now, these are primary questions that exist in everyone's mind. I feel that number one is trust and having a vision that has to be very clear to the organization. Same applies to family, as to how we're going to be moving ahead and what it implies. That's my take. And so long as there is great support and belief in that particular vision, then this vision can materialize. Now, second thing has to do with short-term and long-term. None of these AI platforms that we see are a short-term venture. They are a very long-term venture, and someone needs to be able to understand that he will come against many hurdles and he will need to invest. It is an investment cycle that on many occasions, I'm reading some numbers by different top companies, and I get dizzy with the numbers that they're investing. Google, for example, 200 billion they want to invest in the next few years on AI platforms and AI being used everywhere. I mean, these are dazzling numbers. So all I'm saying is that besides the vision and the trust in the CEO and the board, there has to be certainly a certain amount for investing into those things and cutting it down to short-term and long-term and putting milestones along the way. That's the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, carry on.
Go ahead.
I also have two things to say, super
Okay.
quick. As a mother as well, the best advice I can provide for people is don't keep your kids away from technology. My 4-year-old, I taught her to say, hey, Google, tell me a story. And Google literally comes up with a story at bedtime. This is the thing we do, and she's loving it. So please don't keep them away. And second of all, as a leader, invest in the concept of labs in your company. What does that mean? Get 2 people excited about AI and innovation and see what they could create for you, like Papastrator's labs, Avis labs, and have them come up with ideas that can support the overall mission of the company. And then have them come to you and pitch it. And then if this is a good idea, add more money in it. Last but not least, I think you should all connect with each other. LinkedIn, add us all. And then any learnings you get from labs, just post them. Share this knowledge because, you know, we're figuring things out and we're paving the path towards AI. That's my 2 cents.
Sasha, you want to?
Just very quickly, because I see my brilliant colleagues, George, Marina, and Aris in the corner. We're really happy to be working with the Greek Employment Service and the Greek Ministry of Labor, specifically on looking at how to support skills building programs in Greece. So what I would say is contact my brilliant colleagues who are there. And then also we have a series of our classes as part of this AI Ready commitment. There are more than 80 classes that are available online. Take them. Take the other classes by some of the people who are here today. Be curious and learn. And actually, one of the things that I'm really excited about in terms of this transformation is digital literacy in less than 5 years, we found, will be more important than your university degree when you're applying for jobs. But one of the most sought-after skills by employees going forward in this transformation will be curiosity and creativity. So I would say be curious, be creative, learn as much as you can about these technologies, particularly because that's a really important first step in terms of thinking about what the technology can do in terms of the use case. And then lastly, speaking to your point about what can you do in your company, one of the reasons why we actually do not have a responsible AI team at Amazon Web Services is because we've said, look, responsibility can't be the responsibility of one team. It actually needs to be the responsibility of everybody in this company. And so really take a life cycle approach and test all the time in terms of how you are adopting AI so you can further improve that model. And also, as you brilliantly mentioned in your keynote, the kind of whole life cycle approach and company culture in terms of AI adoption. So that triptych is important.
Thank you. The gentleman?
Hi. I realize previously I didn't introduce myself. I'm Theodoros Katsikis. I'm People Experience and Intelligence Director from Medlin. I'd like to address the 3 women in the panel. First of all, let me congratulate the organization that we have 3 women in the panel today, which I think is quite important. I think
I'm a minority.
You're well. Typically, men were not the minority. The women were the minority. So I'm really glad that we have 3 women in the panel. I'd like to ask a couple of practical examples. And let me just start with some case studies. One of them was from Amazon in 2018, where the AI hiring software downgraded resumes that included the word women and those of candidates from all women colleges because the company to that point did not have much of a history of hiring female engineers and computer scientists. And another one is a study found that Microsoft AI, popular face recognition softwares that could be used to analyze candidates' emotions for desirable traits for corporate culture, have been shown to assign black males more negative emotions than their white counterparts. So how would you advise organizations on a practical level to tackle such biases? And I know you've talked about regulations, policies, ethical AI, but I'm more interested in the practical applications and what all of us here ought to do. Thank you.
Anyone? Yeah, Sasha?
I'm happy to address the Amazon one head on and also talk a little bit more about how we've approached that. So that's something that, just for the visibility of everybody, it was never released in general availability. We used it internally with mock resumes to test how this tool worked. And immediately we retired the tool because we realized that it wasn't up to date. But what we did is we used our learnings from that experience to develop Amazon SageMaker Clarify, which is one of the most used tools in the world to automatically detect bias in systems, including in job postings online. So it's actually more of a testament to this lab reflection of like, how do we, in a very isolated environment where there is no risk to individuals or harm, test out a technology and either retire it or improve it, or make another service. And I really quickly just want to reflect on how that inspired us to do quite a bit of work on diversity, and thank you for flagging the 3 women on the panel. Last week I was on a panel with 5 blonde women, and I had to make a joke that we needed more diversity of women who weren't just blonde, but very happy that there's diversity here. Is that we actually have conducted studies where we find that more diversity in teams, and this doesn't just have to do with women, but more diversity, period, in terms of origins and also backgrounds, educational training, actually increases the return on investment for innovation. And actually boards with more than average women, so unfortunately this means more than 2 women on an average sized board, actually equally have a greater growth inside their company. So diversity is not only a social imperative, it's also an economic one. But there are lots of really great ways that AI can actually help address some of these challenges. And I just want to share very quickly 2 of them. One is that we're working with a media company in Europe to use AI to analyze the amount of time that women and men spend speaking on live television. And then we're translating that assessment, similarly to LeBron James, but more for journalists. We're translating those assessments into recommendations for policy actions of media companies so there's more equitable time. I think you're definitely going to lose today in terms of the equitable time between men and women. But
well, in the 21st century, men are losing anyhow. Oh. That's all right.
It's not over yet.
That's a given.
And then the second area that we're using this is actually to use this Amazon SageMaker Clarify to automatically detect and remove biases in job descriptions. So a lot of job descriptions, de facto, they'll talk about the director and they'll say, he will, or et cetera. And there's proof that shows in terms of data that men apply to jobs when they achieve a certain percentage of the requirements in that job description. Women in general apply to jobs when they have 100% of the qualifications. So we're working to use AI to actually rectify how job descriptions are written, but also how policies related to issues that can affect women, men, and other groups can be more language inclusive. So there are lots of really great opportunities to actually use this technology to address some of the questions related to the challenges of diversity.
Thanks, Sasha. And the last question at the back. There was a gentleman at the back.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm Konstantinos Liakopoulos. I'm from CloudStraight. We're AWS partners. We're working with these models. More of a philosophical question. Gen AI, not AI in general, because AI has been around for a long, long time, is in its core a probabilistic model. So it will always give you the highest score with the highest probability. If we are using it for non-mundane tasks, are we decreasing innovation within the organization?
Good question. So I think, can I do some translation for my sake, primarily?
Actually, sorry, it applies more to you, to universities.
Yes, I will keep myself out. I think I think it's better for the panel. But the thing is, with probabilities, it always tends to drive out the thing that has never been asked before, the thing that has never appeared before. There are concepts in life, 2,000 years ago, in this city, the very concept of equality was born. Until that time, that people would be unequal was the most natural thing in the world. So there are things in life which never came up, but people imagine them. So if we over-rely on probabilities, as is the tendency with AI, how can we somehow imagine radically new ways of doing things? Anyone? Daniel?
When I create an experience, I don't just rely on AI. Like AI will have an output. I will take this output and then I will infuse other parameters in there. For example, on a chatbot, let's say, you'll take the output, but you'll also see what the user previously asked. You will see where the user is based. You will see the demographics. You will see the background. You will see the interest. And you'll bias this output towards what this person, who they are. So you create an experience, so you don't just rely on the probabilities. I know this is, it takes a while to craft, but this is why we need product managers that can craft experiences rather than just taking the raw AI output.
Okay. Daniel?
I would say, let's leave some things also to people and to human, and not only to AI. At least something that differentiated us until the rise of Gen AI, of course, was the amount of creativity, the way of thinking, of bringing new ideas. It's something that humans do. And what we wanted to do with AI is to replace the tasks that were so tedious, they were repetitive, and that nobody wanted to do. And they wouldn't bring that value that a human person can bring to a company. Well, with generative AI, it's something different, because the way the algorithms are built, they can generate something that, okay, it might be inspired by something that they have previously seen, but the point of that is to produce something completely new. Okay, in a nutshell, I would say that also replying to the previous question, for example, the case studies that the gentleman from Metlenda mentioned, they're high-risk applications. So they need to pass a lot of screening until they go into production. They will be highly regulated, this kind of profiling case studies. But then, do we need the machines to take the decisions for us, or do we need the machines to help us reach the decisions? Do we need the machines bring new ideas, or do we need the machines to collect all the evidence, for example, that will help us bring new ideas and help us substantiate why these ideas might be helpful?
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
Maybe just to add to what you evoked, one of the things that we're seeing is the ways in which AI is allowing us to automate a lot of the heavy lifting that's extremely repetitive, particularly for software developers and coding. There's an enormous amount of work in coding that is extremely repetitive, time-consuming, and boring. And so software updates, for example, that we used to have 100 engineers work on for over a month, all of a sudden is done automatically in 6 minutes. So these kinds of things, which also increase the cybersecurity of a lot of services, are extremely transformational, where you can automate those kinds of dimensions. And actually, I would say, and it's one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from software developers that are using a service that we have called Code Whisperer, which uses Gen AI to code, is two pieces of feedback. One is that actually they can focus a lot more on all of the fun, creative things that they want to be doing and the reason why they got into software developing. So it actually allows them to innovate more because it takes the heavy and repetitive tasks out of their job. And the second thing is that it's actually an unbelievable asset in order to address and automatically detect and remove hard-to-detect vulnerabilities related to cybersecurity. So all of a sudden, all of these questions you can actually automate in a way that's extremely productive and allows people to be more creative.
Okay, thank you. Well, unless we have any other comments, I would like to thank our panel members. Wonderful for your contributions. Thank you.